Everything seems to be going perfect if you're Mazda, at least on the surface. You know, last year they broke an all-time sales record here in the United States. In January and February, they're breaking records still and breaking individual records for certain models. But when you guys saw this graph, you couldn't help blow up the comments talking about how Mazda is all the way over here with domestic automakers and some really non-desirable European automakers like Mini and Jaguar, Ford, Dodge. I mean, Hyundai's volume. I mean, I made this video, my last video talking about Hyundai's swelling inventory, but look who's right there with them. It's Mazda with a swelling inventory. And Mazda is nowhere close to a lot of its Japanese counterparts. Heck, even Nissan has a lower day supply. Big day supply is not a good thing. It means the dealers have to work really hard to sell their excess volume, which is costing the dealer a lot of money per day to just have those vehicles on the lot. All right, so they seem to be in a worse spot than Nissan, not product wise, but in terms of inventory. Now Nissan keeps cutting production, where Mazda's, they've been ramping up production, but it looks like the market's cooling and people are not as interested in Mazda as they were maybe last year. And then you have Lexus and Toyota as the gold standard of how to move inventory with desirable brands and desirable products. Okay, Honda, Subaru, not that far behind. And so I made a spreadsheet, go figure, talking about how Mazda is not in a good position right now. And we'll also talk about the tariffs coming and what that's going to do to the market from the Japanese automakers. And you can insinuate for most of the automakers that sell cars here in the United States. So guys, make sure you're buckled in, grab your snacks and drinks because we got a big one to tackle today. I'm taking a look at Mazda's inventory per model versus their competitor in Toyota. We know Toyota's a gold standard on how fast they move cars. Most of their hybrids, for example, are pre-sold. So what we're going to do is look at their comparative models and check out what's happening. All right, if we look at the Mazda 3, Mazda 3 is a current inventory, and we're going to focus mostly on inventory. Oh, I forgot to put the Corolla in here. Hold on. We're going to focus mainly on this, the March inventory here for both of these manufacturers. Mazda's being in the middle, Toyota being on the far right. So the Mazda 3, 4,000 units in inventory compared to the Corolla, which has about double. Now, what's not double, this is what's crazy, is the Mazda 3 has half the available inventory right now, but last year Mazda sold, let's get the calculator. Mazda sold what's 38,877 divided by 232,908. Okay, the Mazda 3 only sold 17% compared to the total Corolla volume, but they have 50% of the available volume now. It's worrisome for the Mazda 3. All right, Corolla's looking, obviously all the Toyota products are the gold standard. Now we don't have a Mazda 6 compared to the Camry. Just felt like throwing that in there so you guys to check out the Camry sales last year in 2024. We have 9,000 Camrys available. All right, fully hybrid Camry now. Now we're going to look at the Corolla Cross. The Corolla Cross competes with the CX-30. All right, the CX-30, most of them are made in Mexico for our market, which could really shake things up with tariffs. Now, you might be saying, Kirk, Mazda has such high volume right now because they're trying to get ahead of the curve, which insinuates a lot of tariffs on the CX-30. And a lot of the products actually all of the products, if you think about it, because the parts, even on the CX-50, though it's built in America, they could have some Mexican parts in there. And then you look at the tariffs coming from the vehicles in Japan, which Mazda has a pretty large percentage. We just don't know what those tariffs on Japan are going to be. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be as high as the 25% that we see on Canada and Mexico, for example. Anyways, that's a theory. Mazda could be boosting the volume before the tariffs hit on April 2nd. The CX-30 and the Corolla Cross, though, they roughly sold the same amount of units last year. 93,000 for the Corolla Cross and 96,000 for the CX-30. But look at the volume. I couldn't believe this, and I might have to double check here. Like, what's my Corolla? No, that's what the Corolla Cross volume is across the nation. That is correct. There's a massive piling up of Mazda CX-30. About 3 times the volume of the Corolla Cross, even though last year they sold about the same. All right, so that's not good for Mazda dealers to have that many CX-30s and they're not able to move them nearly as fast as the Corolla Cross. Very worrisome. Now, what we're going to do with the CX-5 and the CX-50 is we're going to combine them together. They exist in the same category, all right? So, and that's why like the CX-5 could get renamed to the CX-40, kind of as a, I don't know, this is like a subcompact crossover, this would be a compact, and I don't know. Mazda's naming's all over the place. It's kind of frustrating, especially with the CX-70, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But back to the total CX-5 and CX-50s, I added them all up. So if you combine the CX-5 and the CX-50, last year they sold less than half of what the RAV4 did. But look at the volume again, the current inventory that we see from the CX-5 and the CX-50 is more than double than what the RAV4 currently has. That's how I see that selling about 4 times slower than a RAV4, which is very, very worrisome. And again, similar to this figure we see up here with the Corolla and the Mazda 3, the Corolla selling about 4 times faster than the Mazda 3. All right, now let's look at the big 3-row vehicles. And the CX-70, we're going to compare it to the Highlander to the best of our ability. So if we look here at the CX-70 and the Highlander, just comparable inventory, there's double the amount, almost exactly double the amount of CX-70s in inventory compared to Highlanders. Even though, we don't know what the true volume of CX-70 is going to be this year. It's not going to be 90,000. I can tell you that. That's what the Highlander sold last year. It's probably going to be something like, if we go back to the CX-70, they sold 1,200. So if we look at, let's say, because the days are short in February, let's say they would sell about 1,400 in a normal month times 12. They're on pace for only about 17,000 units. Okay, so let's just say Highlander or the CX-70 is going to sell 17,000 units this year, and the Highlander is going to sell 90,000 units in 2025. After we figure the numbers here, the CX-70 sells at about 19% in terms of total volume compared to the Highlander, but it has double the available volume right now. That's not a good number. All right, let's look at the CX-90 now compared to the Grand Highlander. The CX-90 sold 54,000 last year. It has 7,600 available units right now. All right. The Grand Highlander sold 71,000 last year and only has 3,000. So again, the CX-90 has more than double the available volume compared to the Grand Highlander. Yet it sells maybe about half, because this Grand Highlander volume, the 71,000 you see right here, that's going to jump up because of the stop sale being a thing of the past in 2025. Really worrisome for Mazda. They're nowhere close to Toyota. So what does this mean? Well, in theory, it means you're going to see really good deals on Mazda vehicles. All right, so let's take a look at like some of the most worrisome ones. To me, the CX-30 really stood out. CX-30, and we're just going to look in my area. I'm not going to look around the country. Let's look in my area, and we're going to look at lowest price. We're seeing price drops, but not the price drops I was expecting. Now look at this. The CX-30 Select is only $23K. The MSRP is $24,995, but this includes, guys, destination. So we're seeing about, I would say, a $2 to $3 grand price drop on the CX-30s. CX-30 is a better car than the Corolla Cross. It just doesn't have a hybrid. So if you want the hybrid, well, the Corolla Cross is going to have that advantage. Both of them are extremely compromised vehicles in the back seat. If we look at Corolla Cross, again, let's look in my area, and we're going to go to the lowest price. The lowest price of a Corolla Cross is about $1,200 more than what we see on a Mazda CX-30. And the Mazda doesn't have a CVT. Okay, so the Mazda would be getting my buy there. And since the dealers have excess volume of the CX-30, maybe you can even whittle these prices down. Keep that in mind. Again, we're seeing about a $2,000 price drop here on the Mazda CX-50. I mean, if there's only a $3,000 price difference from a CX-30 and a CX-50, I'm picking the CX-50 every single time. $26K. Let's see what the cheapest RAV4 in my area is. About $29K. You know, this one's priced so much lower that I don't really trust that price. But we're seeing around $29K. CX-50, I'd be picking over around $4,000 and saving $3,000. I honestly prefer the CX-5. But the CX-5, let's see here, $26,000. I'd be picking this over a RAV4 and saving about $3,000. But people love that RAV4 hybrid. If we look at the cheapest RAV4 hybrid price, $33,000. So Toyota dealers and Toyota are just printing money with their hybrids right now. But if you want to look at the RAV4 hybrid compared to the CX-50 hybrid, which shares the exact same powertrain, what are we seeing? Well, here's the problem. The CX-50 hybrid doesn't have enough trim levels. It has like 3 different trim levels, and a lot of them are missing the components that you have on the gas cars if you look at equivalent or the same naming trim level. It's really confusing. Like there is no steering assist or something, if I remember right, on the CX. So there's no parking sensors. It's just really weird how it's packaged, and it lacks content. All right. So the CX-50 hybrid, when you look at it compared to a Toyota RAV4 hybrid, they're about the same price. The Mazda being a little bit more fun to drive and looks a little bit better than the RAV4, but doesn't actually get as good as fuel economy as the RAV4. So you're not, the demand for the CX-50 hybrid seems to be pretty good still. All right, let's look at the large platform vehicles. The CX-70, we're going to look at the CX-70 versus the Highlander. Okay, so Highlander, the cheapest price we're seeing is $41,000. Now, these are just placeholder images. Says Highlander, not Grand Highlander here. So $41,000 for a base Highlander. What are we seeing for the lowest price on a CX-70? All right, $39,000. I'd be picking a CX-70 over a Highlander, assuming you don't need a third row. If you need a third row, that's another discussion. So $39,000 though. Can Mazda? The thing is like it's hard for Mazda to command the same sort of price compared to Toyota due to Toyota's reputation. All right, Mazda's a good reputation, and this Mazda CX-70 drives amazing, rear-wheel drive bias, all-wheel drive standard. The Highlander is going to be front-wheel drive biased and standard front-wheel drive, and then you have to pay more for all-wheel drive on the Highlander. So CX-70, I would be buying over the Highlander, absolutely, assuming you don't need a third row. Yeah, and then we're looking at the CX-90 here. Now, the CX-90 has an additional trim level that's below the CX-70, which makes it an even better buy. The CX-90 is a great buy, a fantastic buy, an excellent buy. I can't wait to review it this year, to put on my spreadsheet, to put it right at the top, to be honest, because I know that's where it's going to fall. All right, because look at this. MSRP of a CX-90 is $37,000. We're seeing a $1,000 discount, but remember, this also includes destination, which MSRP doesn't. So you're saving about $2,000 here compared to the MSRP. All right, let's look at a Grand Highlander. The Grand Highlander, oh my gosh, the Grand Highlander costs about $7,000 more. Am I seeing this right? About 37,000 roughly to 43,000. So $6,000 more. Not worth it. Now, it has more space than the CX-90. There's no doubt about it. But the CX-90 also, you can get it in a plug-in hybrid, which I'm curious to see what that starts out at. Lowest price for a CX-90 plug-in hybrid is $50K. That is not worth it. Absolutely not. If we look at a Grand Highlander hybrid, the lowest price is about $50K. Ooh, man, here's the thing, I'd be taking the CX-90 inline 6 turbo because that's a mild hybrid. It gets about 25 miles per gallon. It's pretty good for such a large vehicle. Sorry, Grand Highlander. I know you're more spacious, but I'm taking the CX-90 over it. All right. If we're just comparing base model to base model. All right. So here's the thing. The comparable Mazdas cost several $1,000s compared to the Toyota counterparts. And Toyota's still outselling them. It's the brand. The brand strength of Toyota is mind-numbing. The Corolla is not a better car than the Mazda 3. All right. The Mazda 3 is a more fun car. It's a sportier car. The Corolla, though, has a hybrid and gets great fuel economy. If the Mazda 3 had a hybrid, got good fuel economy, and was still fun to drive, like the Civic Hybrid, for example, I think it would be doing better. All right. Rest in peace, Mazda 6. The Corolla Cross. The CX-30 and the Corolla Cross is very worrisome because the Corolla Cross CVT, meaning the non-hybrid model, is nowhere close to as good of a car as the CX-30. And the CX-30 standard all-wheel drive, or the Corolla Cross is front-wheel drive. Yet, there's so much more inventory for the CX-30, and you can get it for cheaper. It's really worrisome for Mazda. I don't know why people are not flocking to Mazdas right now and being able to get a really good deal. Right? They're listed cheaper than Toyotas. They're better cars than Toyotas. We don't know about, reliability. Some people will argue for Mazda over Toyota nowadays anyway. Look at more than double the volume for the CX-5 and the CX-50 combined over the RAV4, yet it sells less than half. You guys should be able to, and here's the thing, the CX-5 is a better car than the RAV4, just doesn't have a hybrid. If you don't want a hybrid, get a CX-5 in my opinion. If you need the hybrid, you can look at the CX-50, but the fuel economy on it isn't as good as the RAV4. So it's again, Mazda having an equal, if not better vehicle here, but they're not selling at nearly the same clip, meaning you should be able to get a much better deal on the Mazda compared to the Toyota. And the Grand Highlander and the Highlander versus the CX-70 and the CX-90. Well, the CX-70 is dead. It's just a terrible vehicle. It costs more than a CX-90 and has less seats. And the CX-90, is a more fun to drive vehicle than the Grand Highlander, has more performance until you get to the most expensive Grand Highlander, the Hybrid Max, which gets about 25, 30 miles per gallon, something like that. But the CX-90 base gets similar fuel economy with an inline six rear-wheel drive driving mechanics. The CX-90 is a better car than a Grand Highlander, in my opinion. It's just a Grand Highlander has better fuel economy, especially when you look at the Grand Highlander hybrid. But those I'm seeing are like $50,000. That's a stretch. Don't know if it's worth that much money compared to the CX-90's plug-in hybrid around $50,000. All right, CX-90 is a really, really good buy versus a Grand Highlander. CX-70, not really a good buy versus the normal Highlander. It's a good car, but the CX-90 is just better for less money. But yes, you should be able to get great deals on Mazdas right now since their inventory, guys, is so high. Mazda needs huge sales volume to keep up with their massive production volume. Now, the Japanese manufacturers with tariffs, I just wanted to mention this. Subaru dealers after March 2nd, they're saying that there's going to be probably price increases. And if we go to this article, Japan's automakers are bracing for significant production cuts when the tariffs go live. All right. I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's the tariffs are about a 99% sure thing that's going to happen on April 2nd. We just don't know the tariffs, or we don't know what the tariffs will be outside of Mexico and Canada, because those are at 25%. Japan might have a low tariff. And if they do, they might really ramp up Japanese exports into America. That's my theory. So time will tell, though. There's a lot of insecurity in the auto market right now, and it doesn't look great for Mazda because their inventory is so high relative to their sales rates. Double the inventory of Toyota, yet they sell at a clip of 20% of Toyota, for example. All right, so they're selling 4 times slower in some cases compared to the competitive Toyota models. What does that mean? Again, deals, deals, deals if you're in the market for a new car. Make sure you're looking at Mazda. I think Nissan too, especially some of their like the Pathfinder, the Frontier, those are fantastic cars too. All right. So I'm going to see you guys in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on Mazda's rising inventory. I don't think it's going to stay high. They might start reducing capacity, especially in Mexico with the CX-30 and the Mazda 3 with the tariff situation. But they're pretty heavily dependent on their Japanese imports, like Mitsubishi, like Toyota to an extent. You know, the thing with Honda, though, is that they have a lot of production in Canada and Mexico. So that could hurt Honda actually a lot more than Mitsubishi, which has zero production in the United States. It depends, again, on what the tariffs on the Japanese exports are going to be. Crazy times. And if you're in the market, go ahead and look at a Mazda. Again, I guess I'm not sponsored, but just looking at the inventory for them and how slow they're selling, you're going to be able to really haggle for a low price for a Mazda. Toyota, good luck. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and peace.